Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
It's me, Egbert, once again. I'm the new owner of this station. I went out and hired the best talk radio consultant, Jeff Allen from News Talk STL, and told him to hire the worst talent he could find. Jeff did exactly as I told him. Ladies and gentlemen, here are Brad and John.
What a way to start the show, huh, John? I mean...
Hey, we don't have to be reactive, Brad.
Right.
You know what I mean? We don't have to do it on other people's terms. We just mind what we do and do the best we can every day.
Right from the get-go, we get the owner of the station that's taking shots at us. Hey, good morning. This is the Brad and John Show, bjshow.co. I got it right that time. What do? We sit here and we talk about stuff, primarily the state of Missouri, local, St. Louis Metro, predominantly Westplex area. That's what we talk about. And John is a guy who for 22 plus years has put together this report every single day, johncombest.com, C-O-M-B-E-S-T. He lists what he says are the top stories, and he uses sources and links to them on his website, newspapers, television stations, radio stations, blogs, all that kind of stuff. And we start to show up with the top three. And I'm going to say... I think I know what the number one is right this morning, but we're just gonna muddle.
We'll see if you're right, Brad.
Let me.
Does it involve somebody in your phone who you often call live on the show?
Funny you should say that, because guess who's going to get a call this morning? Okay, so let's go with number three, and we'll see if I'm right. And I'll just so people will say, well, he didn't really mean what he said. I say the number one topic is BE. Okay, we'll just see what happens. Okay, now here's John with the top three.
And we will focus today on the state of Missouri. There are a couple articles at the top of my website that have to do with the federal government. U.S. Rep. Jason Smith was interviewed by Jason Rosenbaum. But we're going to focus on Missouri stories, Missouri-specific stories today. Number three is union membership in Missouri. Yesterday, the Bureau of Labor Statistics issued their annual report on union membership. Brad, would you surmise that union membership went up in Missouri, down, or stayed flat?
I think it went up. How did I do with that?
And well, and you know what? That's a popular guess, and it is surprisingly incorrect.
Really?
And in fact, Brad, your sentiment was echoed by a law professor at SLU. By the way, this story comes to us from KCUR in Kansas City, the public radio station in Kansas City.
Which I believe
is...
is...
A SLU law professor who teaches labor law talked about how it would probably be surprising for most people, considering how much essentially the union's PR machine was in overdrive this year.
Well,
go ahead, Brad.
Well, first off, KCUR is interesting because that's the University of Missouri public radio station, and I believe they are now union as well too.
Yeah, they're attempting to organize.
Yeah,
well,
just like KWMU has already decided to. They've already had the union vote. Remember, we had the situation where I ran into Jason Rosenbaum at the, which is now the interesting story, the Missouri Caucus, the Missouri Freedom Caucus dealie. Anyway, see, that's what's interesting to me, because you hear, and you're right, maybe it's because they got a good PR machine. You hear about all the places, well, so-and-so's gone union.
And Starbucks, for example, and the law professor indeed pointed out Starbucks is one of the groups that is, those unions have manufactured so much attention for every stunt that they have outside of a Starbucks. You hear about it across multiple platforms.
Right. And I guess the thing that always bothers me, and being a guy, and once again, I'll say this by, caveat by saying I used to be in two unions. I was in the IBEW Local 4, and I was also in the AFTER union before they merged with SAG, which the story with that, if you're in AFTER right now, you pick the Emmys. Did you know that?
I did know that, yeah.
Yeah, so they send you all the DVDs, or they send you the movies, the downloads, or something like that, and you get to watch them all, and then you vote just like everybody else votes. But that's neither here nor there. So
you were accepted as a member of SAG because of your video that people could see on YouTube that you filmed at the old Hazelwood High School.
No, I
correct?
wasn't. I was never in SAG because I was in AFTRA before they merged with SAG. SAG and AFTRA were two separate unions. SAG is the Screen Actors Guild, and AFTRA is American Federation of Television and Radio Artists. And they merged because, you know why part of that is?
Why is that?
There's a lot of cross-pollination between the actors and AFTRA because of the fact they do a lot of radio commercials.
Interesting.
Yeah, matter of fact, the guy who is this little trivia thing, I can't remember the guy's name. He's in a bunch of different shows. Matter of fact, I believe he was one of his top roles was he was in Ford versus Ferrari, the Matt Damon movie. You know what I'm talking about?
I've heard of it. Yeah, I didn't. I'm not a movie guy, so I didn't see it.
Well, anyway, that guy and he's also in a couple of the Bosch episodes and things like that. He plays a prosecuting attorney.
Okay.
He's the voice for Home Depot. When you hear,
oh wow, okay.
When you hear a Home Depot commercial on the radio, or when you go into the stores, it's him telling you things about the store.
Interesting. Well, so the percentage of union membership as a percentage of the workforce decreased from 2022 to 2023. It decreased from roughly 10% to 9%, and it looks like it's roughly a 2,000 member difference. So it's not like it's a huge decrease. But it's a bit surprising. Again, like Brad, like you said, for folks who are used to seeing a lot of headlines about union organizing and recruitment, it's a surprise. The number 2 story today is a follow-up to a situation that we discussed yesterday. Yesterday, there were dueling press conferences, or dueling press availabilities, I should say, once again between Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft and State Auditor Scott Fitzpatrick. So if you're following along at home, and we don't need to get into the minutia of the fight again today, but if you're following along at home, yesterday was a Fitzpatrick response to an Ashcroft response to the Fitzpatrick response to Ashcroft's response to the audit. So we're on round 3, depending on how you count it here. Ashcroft had a pretty good point yesterday when he said, in relations to the criticism that taking Missouri out of a federal election monitoring system would be harmful, Ashcroft claims that his office has been essentially removing more dead people from the rolls and updating the voter rolls more every month now than they were when they were under the federal program. So that's a data point that, if it's accurate, it seems pretty valid.
A little bit more information.
Go ahead, Brad.
I was going to say a little bit more information for the people who don't know what we're talking about. We talked about this the other day. This is a deal where Ashcroft has withdrawn from a national group of state Secretary of States that essentially they try to purge their voter rolls of duplicate people. Like if you, let's say you have a house in Florida and have a house in St. Louis, and you're registered in both states, and also
that's
people
right.
who are no longer with us, who are deceased, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And Auditor Fitzpatrick had a couple different criticisms of Ashcroft's office, but that was one of the 2 primary ones. But most interestingly about what Jay Ashcroft said yesterday, he went through kind of that data point, and then he suggested that here's an interesting quote. He said, "It's understandable why the people of this country and the people of Missouri can think there's a deep state when things like this happen." So,
and who said that again?
Ashcroft said that about Fitzpatrick.
So he's accusing Fitzpatrick of being deep state?
The suggestion there, which isn't an intimation, I think it's an outright statement that Scott Fitzpatrick and his office are part of the deep state, seems maybe a bridge too far.
Interesting.
Yeah, and you would rarely hear, and you know, the surprising thing is, again, I'm not friends with Jay Ashcroft, so I don't know if this is accurate or not, but it certainly doesn't seem like Jay Ashcroft to come out and accuse a guy like Scott Fitzpatrick of maybe being a little bit intimate with the deep state. But again, it's a governor's race, Brad.
It's fascinating.
Which leads us into story number 1, doesn't it?
Yes, but let me just make one comment about that.
Sure.
It's fascinating to me that they're both on the same team. They're both Republicans, but now they're like squabbling. And it's sort of like what's been happening over the last couple of weeks with the presidential race is that Trump will tell you that Vivek and Ron DeSantis are horrible people, and then when they drop out of the race, they're his best buddies. It's sort of like, okay, whatever.
It's in the heat of and isn't that something that I believe it was Jen Psaki said when she was interviewed one time about some of the criticism she had said about other Democratic, no, maybe it was Kamala Harris. That's who it was, who said essentially, hey, look, you say a lot of things in primaries that aren't true. So what? You know?
Yeah, whatever.
And the number one story, as Brad alluded to earlier, is the kerfuffle continues in the Missouri Senate. People who view this and take this very seriously would call it more than a kerfuffle. They would call it, chaos or something cataclysmic. But the latest update is that yesterday, Senator Caleb Rowden, who leads the Missouri Senate, stripped members of the Freedom Caucus of their committee chairmanships. And in the case of Bill Eigel, he also removed Bill Eigel from one of his committees outright. Or hold on one second, I got that wrong. He stripped Denny Hoskins, who's a state senator from Warrensburg, of membership on the committee that Denny Hoskins was on. So the most egregious thing about this, and this sounds like a punchline, but that Caleb Rowden also took away their parking spaces in the Capitol. Did you see this, Brad?
I think that's so funny. I mean, talk about petty.
It's hard for an observer to look at this. I think it's easy for somebody that doesn't pay daily attention to this to look and be like, oh, this Rowden guy is fighting back against these filibuster guys. But then when you hear that he took their parking passes away, it's a little. It does seem a little petty, doesn't it, Brad?
Well, more than a little petty. But first off, see, there's two angles to this story. You say it looks petty. I'm saying, once again, this is the privilege of having a high office. That if you and I go down to the Capitol, we have to park in East Jesus. You know what I'm saying? But
wouldn't Bill Eigel give you his parking pass?
No, but yet they've got their own little dedicated parking space. Now,
what's really interesting, and I would plug this too, Eigel right now is on Pete Mundo's show, who is at KCMO Radio over in Kansas City. Eigel is on there now talking about the brouhaha. And then Pete is going to, in the 9 o'clock hour, he's going to have Mike Searpoy, who's one of the members of the non-Freedom Caucus, on at 9 o'clock to refute or support, who knows, some portions of whatever Bill Eigel says on the 7 o'clock hour.
Did you?
And then today at 1 p.m., Scott Fawn is going to live stream an interview with Senator Caleb Rowden, 1 p.m. Central.
Did you?
So many of us will be tuned into that. I won't be watching it live, but I will watch it after it happens.
Did you hear what they're now calling the Freedom Caucus?
I didn't. What is it? Oh, the Chaos Caucus?
The Chaos Caucus. That's what.
Yeah, well, that was the label that Caleb Rowden gave them, for sure.
The Chaos Caucus, which is what, come on, like, guys, are we on the same team or what? You know what I mean? In this case.
And you know what? I mean, so here's what I can't figure out. Just strategically, so you take ethics and morals and values and ideology out of it. Tactically, if you're the Freedom Caucus and you've been stripped now, what do you do? So do you – and here's the argument I would make. Here's one option. It's kind of like at the end of a football game when the other team has the ball on the 1 yard line and they might score, but you don't want them to run the clock down. Like, if you're the Freedom Caucus, do you let this happen and then maintain your status as the aggrieved party? So, you see what I'm saying? So, for example, Denny Hoskins is running – I think Denny makes a really good point here. Denny is running for Secretary of State against Caleb Rowden. And so Denny can go out now and say, hey, I stood up for what I believe. And what did my opponent in the primary do? He stripped me of my committee chairmanship. He removed me from the committee. And to boot, he even took my parking spot away. And Denny makes the point that it's a lot like what Joe Biden is doing in D.C.
But here's the problem. Okay, I'm going to say this loud and proud. This is where the Republican Party is so screwed up, because this never happens with the Democrats. Because I don't care if it's on the city council, if it's on, state, federal, whatever. The Democrats always have this unified front. Okay, you know what I'm saying?
Today they do.
They always
now,
have.
That hasn't always been accurate.
But now
Missouri.
they
but
always.
You're right. Today they do.
Right, but I'm even on the federal level. Okay, if Joe Biden says we're going to make a law that makes it illegal to lick a lollipop more than 3 times, and and every single Democrat, even though they go home and they go, God, that's the stupidest law in the world, but yet when it comes time to vote, yes, I'm voting for the 3-lick lollipop law. You know what I mean? It's just like, okay.
I do. Now, I would point out, though, Brad, so here's, to play devil's advocate here, If Democrats had control of the U.S. House of Representatives by 1 seat, I don't think Cori Bush would be acquiescing and going along with everything. I think she would be flexing a little bit and saying, hey, me and my squad, if you don't do what we want to do, if we vote with the Republicans on anything, we tip the balance.
You know what, John? I'm going to disagree with you on that because I think she's wacko enough that she doesn't care, that she's just in it for herself, that, that she doesn't care about the big picture. You know what? To me, what's so sad about this whole situation is the Republicans, and here's, I think that if you interviewed every single Republican and said, every single Republican in the state Senate, state representative, and said, are you for or against abortion? Almost every single one of them would say, I'm against abortion. Okay? So while they're arguing back and forth, this group with a lot of money, which is going to, have a lot more money, is going to sneak in into the Constitution, the same thing we have with the marijuana law, essentially saying, abortions are legal in the state of Missouri. You can get them anywhere, any place you want. You can drive down the street and, they're going to be an abortions are us place. You can just walk right in and get an abortion. That's what we want. And the Republicans are going to be shooting themselves in the foot because of the fact that the reason for that is the Constitution in the state of Missouri is so easy to amend. You only need so many signatures and the people, they pay these people to go out and get the signatures. Then it gets on the ballot and then they spend a bunch of money on it, and it passes and it becomes something that the legislators can't touch anymore.
Brad, that's the exact point that Bill Eigel made in an email that he sent out yesterday in response to being stripped from committee chairmanships, in response to what happened to the Freedom Caucus. Eigel's point was exactly that. Eigel said, why are we fighting right now when the number one thing we should do is reform is change the petition system so that we keep abortion out of the Constitution.
See, Bill Eigel,
now, both sides, Brad, are going to be using that progress argument and why the other side is wrong.
And once again, what do you get? Hey, you're at fault. No, you're at fault. No, you're at fault. That's what you get.
Right.
And the sad part of this is, and once again, I will say this once again. I know because I can get away with this because I'm the libertarian kind of guy. The whole abortion issue is turned into this incredible wedge issue, partly because of the crazy crap going on in Texas, where they've made it absolutely positively illegal to have an abortion, even if the mother could die. Right. If the mother's on her deathbed and the doctor comes in and says, ma'am, the only way we can save you is to have an abortion because whatever there are complications with childbirth. Trust me, I know that. Been there, done that with my wife. Okay.
Yeah, you have the ectopic pregnancies, you have all kinds of exceptions.
Right. But yet they put the law into effect that there's absolutely positively no exceptions, which to me is a tremendously stupid thing. And it's being used against the Republicans in Texas.
Of course it is.
Because all these women. There's the latest one I saw was a woman who's a doctor who has
everybody's got a story. Everybody knows somebody who has a story about it. I think that's the point.
Right. And it's to the point where it's like, sorry, no exceptions. And once again, to me, as a dude, I look at this and I think to myself, now I know why women get mad at men because of the fact that the women are, once again, one of the things the women always say, it's my body. And to a certain extent, in this case, I agree with them 100%. But not only it's their body, the doctor says you could, we could get a doctor on here and they could explain the whole thing about, if this happens, that happens.
Sure.
You hear about, still to this day, you hear about women who die in childbirth. For various, it's not nearly as common as it was back in the 1800s where, women were giving birth in the cabin and stuff like that and complications happened and they died. But anyway.
And as we're up against time, it's a good opportunity for the media to use these extreme examples and then say, see, this is what happens when you elect a pro-life Republican.
But see, once again, that's where the Republicans are dumb. They're walking into this. It's like they're being essentially baited into it. It's like, hey, Mr. Republican, how do you feel about if a woman has a life-threatening, a pregnancy? Are you for or against abortion? And then they say, well, I'm against abortion. And all the women out there go like, not voting for that dude. You know what I'm saying?
Many of the women. We can't say all the women, but a lot of women.
Right, not voting for him. Okay, we have to take a break. Did I get myself in enough trouble there?
Oh yeah, not at all. Not more than any other Wednesday, Brad. What is today?
Yeah,
Wednesday. Yeah.
Today's Whopper Wednesday. Hold on a minute. It's my favorite day of the week. $3 Whoppers at Burger King. Okay, it's 7:22.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?